The first call came in at 6:58 in the morning, while I was standing in my kitchen in my work clothes, eating oatmeal out of the pot because I hadn't had time to find a bowl. I almost didn't pick up. I let it ring out. Then it rang again. By the 11th call, the oatmeal had gone cold, and I was just standing there, watching the phone buzz across the counter like it was trying to crawl away from me. I picked up on the 22nd call. "Renata, baby, please," my mother said, her voice cracking in that specific way she only used when she needed something. "I can explain everything." I didn't say anything for a second. I was doing the math in my head. Not the dollar amount yet. That would come later. Just the number of calls. 22. In under 3 hours. "Explain what, Mom?" I said. I haven't even looked at my statement yet. There was a pause on the line, the kind of pause that tells you someone's deciding how to lie to you. But here's what she didn't know. I'd looked at that statement 4 days before she ever called me. I'd already known. I'd already done something about it. And the dinner she was planning to throw the following weekend, to bring the family back together. She had no idea it was about to become the most expensive meal of her life. Welcome back to Home of Secrets. I'm Renata Voss. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a forensic accountant in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For 9 years, I was the financial safety net for a family that called me selfish the one time I let go of the rope. This is the story of how my mother stole my credit card to fund my sister's vacation, called me 22 times in one morning to beg, and walked into a dinner 3 weeks later, thinking she was the one in control of the story. She wasn't. If you've ever been the responsible one in a family that mistook your responsibility for an open account, stay with me, drop a comment, and subscribe. You're going to want to see how this one ends. I was the kid who got the school photo with the gap tooth and a B+ average, standing next to my sister Brianna, who got the photo where she was already smiling, like she knew the camera loved her. Brianna is 5 years younger than me, and from the time she was 6 years old, our mother called her the pretty one, in front of company, like it was a compliment that included me by omission. I was the one with the 3.9 GPA. I was the one who worked the register at a drugstore starting at 16, so I could pay for my own car insurance. I have a certificate from a regional accounting competition I won my senior year of high school. A laminated piece of paper with my name misspelled on it, Renata, that I kept anyway, because it was the only thing in our house with my name on it that wasn't a chore chart. Brianna got dance lessons. I got told dance lessons were for kids who had time for that. I didn't resent her for it when we were young. You don't resent a 6-year-old for being adored. I resented the architecture underneath it. The way my mother would introduce us at church potlucks. "This is Brianna, my baby. Isn't she just a doll?" And then, almost as an afterthought, "And this is Renata. She's good with numbers." Good with numbers. That was my whole personality, as far as my mother was concerned, for 20 years. It turned out to be the thing that held this entire family up. Nobody thanked the foundation while the house was still standing. The first time I covered one of my mother's bills, I was 25. She called crying, said the mortgage company was sending a notice, that she was 3 months behind and didn't know what she'd do. I sent her $2,800 that week, transferred straight from my savings. No questions asked, because she was my mother, and that's what you do. That was supposed to be the only time. Over the next 9 years, it became a pattern so consistent I could have built a spreadsheet off it. And eventually, I did. Mortgage shortfalls twice a year, like clockwork, always right after the holidays. Medical bills for a knee surgery she didn't have supplemental insurance for. A roof repair. a car repair, Brianna's starter loan for a boutique that lasted 4 months, Brianna's rent, 3 separate times, always framed as, just until she gets back on her feet. I logged every single transfer, not because I was planning anything. At first, it really was just a private ledger, the kind any accountant keeps out of habit. Date, amount, stated reason. By year 3, it was $19,200. By year 6, it was $41,750. By the morning of that phone call, the running total, verified, dated, itemized, sat at $61,400. The humiliations were small enough that I kept absorbing them. At Brianna's engagement party, my mother stood up to give a toast and thanked everyone who helped make this day possible, and named 4 people, none of them me, despite the fact that I had paid for the venue deposit. At Easter, she told a table of relatives that Brianna had always had such a gift for living life fully, and then turned to me and said, "And Renata's just so steady. Bless her. The way you describe a folding chair." I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that love doesn't need credit. I believed that for a long time. I believed it right up until the morning I opened my banking app and saw a charge for $4,380 to a resort in Cabo San Lucas, made on a credit card I didn't remember handing anyone, because I hadn't. It happened 3 weeks before that 22-call morning, but the call wasn't the breaking point. The breaking point was the dinner the week before that, the one where my mother announced the trip like it was a gift she'd given. We were at her house, 12 of us around the table, aunts, an uncle, Brianna's fiancé, a few of my mother's church friends she'd started inviting to everything that year. My mother stood, the way she always did before a big reveal, tapping her wine glass with a fork. "I have an announcement," she said, beaming at Brianna. "I am sending my baby girl and her girlfriends to Cabo for a week before the wedding. Bachelorette of a lifetime, all paid for." The table erupted. Gasps, applause, Brianna covering her mouth with both hands, like she hadn't already known for a month. I sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth, doing math I didn't want to be doing at a dinner table. I didn't have $4,380 sitting loose. Nobody does. Casually. I asked, carefully, lightly, "Mom, how did you manage that?" And my mother, in front of all 12 people, in front of her church friends, in front of Brianna's fiancé, smiled and said the line I will remember for the rest of my life. "Oh, I just used Renata's card. She won't even notice. She never spends on herself anyway." The table laughed. Actually laughed, like it was an endearing little fact about me, the way you'd say someone never finishes their plate. I want to tell you I said something in that moment. I didn't. I set my fork down on the edge of my plate, quietly, the way you'd set down a tool you were done using. I looked at my mother, then at Brianna, who would not meet my eyes, and I said, "Excuse me," and I stood up and got my coat. Nobody followed me to the door. Not one of the 12 people at that table said a word in my defense. I heard my mother say, as I was putting my coat on in the hallway, "She's so sensitive lately," to someone, like I was a smoke detector going off for no reason. I drove home that night and didn't cry. I want to be honest about that, because it surprised me too. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop at my kitchen table and pulled up 9 years of transfer history, side by side with a single unauthorized charge for $4,380, and I felt something settle in me that had been loose for a very long time. I am a forensic accountant. My job, every day, is to find the moment where money moved without permission, and trace exactly where it went and who let it happen. I was very good at applying that skill to my own life. The first thing I did that same night was call my bank's fraud line and report the charge as unauthorized. I had every right to. My mother had never been added as an authorized user on that card. She'd apparently used an old number she'd seen on a statement years earlier and a name and address match to push the charge through over the phone, the way someone does when they've watched you enter your information 100 times and assumes you'll never check. The second thing I did was cancel the 4 recurring transfers I'd had set up to help with utilities for my mother's house. Transfers I'd automated years earlier and frankly forgotten were still running. $340 a month. Gone. Just like that. With 3 clicks. The third thing I did was call my insurance agent and remove myself as a secondary contact on my mother's homeowner's policy, something I'd been listed on since my father passed, for reasons that had never made sense to anyone but her. No rage. I want to be clear about that, because people expect this part of the story to be dramatic, and it wasn't. It was arithmetic. Column A, what I had been providing. Column B, what I owed anyone, contractually or morally, going forward. I closed the gap between those 2 columns, the same way I'd close out any account that had been mismanaged for too long. Within 4 days, my mother had told 3 of her sisters, 2 of her church friends, and apparently the woman who does her hair, that I had abandoned the family right before Brianna's wedding, over nothing. I heard about it secondhand, the way you always hear about these things. An aunt texting me, "Are you okay? Heard you and your mom had a falling out." Like it was weather. Brianna posted something vague on social media about toxic family members who can't be happy for other people, with a photo from the engagement party, captioned with 3 crying, laughing emojis that somehow read as more hostile than words would have. People I hadn't spoken to in years started liking it. I did not respond to any of it. I did not post a rebuttal, did not call the aunts back to defend myself, did not so much as send a single text correcting the record. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop. I'd already had most of the financial records, but I started adding to it that week. Screenshots of the unauthorized charge, the fraud report confirmation number, 9 years of transfer history exported clean from my bank, dated and itemized, the same way I'd build a case file for a client. I didn't build that folder because I had a plan yet. I built it because documenting things is what I do when I don't know what else to do with my hands. It just so happened that the habit of a careful accountant and the instincts of someone protecting herself turned out to be the exact same motion. The discovery came 9 days after the dinner, when I called the credit card company back to ask a follow-up question about the fraud case, and the representative mentioned, almost in passing, "This is actually the 2nd card on file under a similar profile, so would you like me to pull up the other one?" I didn't know there was another one. It turned out my mother had opened a 2nd card 3 years earlier, in a partial version of my name, using my old address before I moved, with a signature on the application that was clearly an attempt at mine is close. But the loop on the R was wrong, the way it always is when someone's copying your handwriting from a check instead of actually knowing how you write. That card had a balance of $7,150, entirely Brianna's charges, mostly at the same boutique that had failed 4 months after my mother had lent her the startup money. I called my coworker Denise, who I trust with anything financial, because she spent 15 years specializing in exactly this kind of family fraud case, and she walked me through what I was looking at over coffee the next morning. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said. sliding the printed signature comparison back across the table to me. "This is forgery. You have a real case here, Renata, and I don't think you should sit on it." That same week, going through a box of my late father's papers that I'd never fully sorted. He passed 6 years earlier. I found a notarized letter I had never seen. It named me, specifically, as sole executor of a small rental property he'd owned outright, the one my mother had been living in rent-free, and calling her house for 6 years, telling everyone, including me, that it had passed to her outright in his will. It hadn't. It had passed to me. My mother had simply never told me, and had been treating a property she didn't legally control as leverage over a family. She'd also never told the truth. I sat with that letter for a long time. Something in me shifted from "I'm done helping" to "I'm not letting this get rewritten." I am not a person who does things impulsively, and I didn't start here either. I filed a formal police report on the forged card the same week, set, not out of cruelty, but because Denise was right, and because a forensic accountant who finds forgery and does nothing about it isn't really a forensic accountant. I retained a lawyer, a woman named Priya, who specializes in family financial disputes, and within 2 weeks, she'd sent formal notice to my mother, establishing my legal ownership of the rental property, with a 30-day timeline for either a lease agreement or vacancy. My mother called 11 times the day she received that letter. I let 4 go to voicemail, and answered the 5th, calmly, the way you'd answer a client who was upset about an audit finding. "Mom, I need you to talk to my lawyer about this. Not me," I said, and hung up when she started raising her voice. She tried one more thing, what I can only call an ambush. She showed up at my office, in the lobby, with Brianna, saying she just wanted to talk like a family, in front of my coworkers, clearly hoping the audience would soften me, the way audiences always had before. I walked out to the lobby, and I said one sentence. "If you want to talk, it goes through Priya. I'll see you at the dinner." Then I went back upstairs. Because there was a dinner. My mother had already scheduled one, a family fresh start dinner, 3 weeks out, live-streamed for Brianna's wedding followers, meant to repair the story everyone had been telling about me. She had no idea I now had a folder with a forged signature, a fraud case number, a legal notice on the property she was living in, and 9 years of bank statements with her name all over them. The dinner happened at my mother's house, the house that was legally mine, though she didn't know I knew that yet in front of everyone. 20-some people there this time, plus a ring light set up in the corner of the dining room, because Brianna wanted the reconciliation filmed for her page. My mother gave a toast, the same kind she always gave, thanking everyone for coming together, saying family always finds its way back. She looked at me with the practiced warmth of someone performing for a camera and said Renata's just been under a lot of stress at work. That's all this was. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. "I have 3 things to say, and then I'm leaving," I said. "The card you used without my permission was fraud, and I've already filed a report. The second card, the one with my name signed wrong, with Brianna's $7,150 on it, that's forgery, and it's with my lawyer. And this house you've been telling everyone is yours. It's not. My father left it to me. You have 30 days. The room went silent in the specific way a room goes silent when a live stream is still running, and nobody knows whether to mute it. My mother's face did something I'd never seen it do before. The practiced warmth just emptied out of it. She said, "You never even notice what you spend. That's the whole point." The exact line from the dinner 3 weeks earlier. The line that had started all of this. Except this time it landed like an admission instead of a joke. Brianna, somewhere off camera, said, Mom, you told me it was your money. Quiet enough that the ring light's microphone still caught it. I didn't say anything else. I picked up my coat, and I left. Here's where everyone ended up in the months after. My mother was issued a notice to vacate the property within 60 days after the legal process played out. She's currently renting a small apartment across town, paid for, this time, entirely by herself. The forgery case on the second credit card resulted in a restitution agreement, $7,150, repaid over time, with the bank closing the account permanently. Her church friends, the ones who'd laughed at that dinner table, stopped inviting her to things once the live stream clip made its way around. Turns out an audience that loves a reconciliation story loves a public reckoning even more, and it had over 40,000 views before Brianna took it down. Brianna's wedding still happened, smaller than planned, without the Cabo trip, which the resort fully refunded once I provided documentation of fraud. She and I don't talk much these days, but she did send one text, 3 months later. I should have said something at the table. I'm sorry I didn't. As for me, I closed out the property, listed it for rent at fair market value, and used the deposit to put a down payment on a small forensic consulting practice of my own. The thing I'd been saving toward quietly for years, without telling anyone, because nobody had ever asked what I was building. I kept that laminated certificate from the accounting competition, the one with my name misspelled, and it's framed now, correctly labeled, on the wall of my own office. A year later, I had Thanksgiving at my own place, with Denise, with my landlord-turned-friend Marcus, with 3 women from a credit counseling group I started volunteering with after all of this. People who, for once, knew exactly what I'd given, and never once made me feel like a folding chair for giving it. I still have that certificate on my wall. Somebody finally read the name right. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who show up and keep showing up without sending you a bill for it later. If you've ever been the one holding everything together, while everyone else got the toast and the trip and the title's ass, you already know exactly what I mean. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes you just have to set the fork down. If this one hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments if you've ever found out you were the bank account and not the daughter. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe to Home of Secrets. There's always more behind closed doors.